Welcome to Together We Rise.
Starring mother-daughter dynamic duo Alicia Schwartz
and Rochelle Schwartz
in collaboration with MAPS Global Events. Signing off.
Mwah.
Hi, everybody.
How is everybody doing? We are
Together We Rise.
Yay!
I am Coach Alicia Schwartz.
And I'm Coach Rochelle Schwartz, and we are mother-daughter
dynamic duo. Yes, we are.
We are some combo. So we're so happy you're with us this evening, and we have some horrible weather out there. I don't know where all you guys are, but we're glad we're inside.
Yes.
With all of you.
And we are so excited. We have an amazing guest, and we'll introduce her in a moment. But before we do all of that, we wanted to play, right?
Well, yeah. You want to tell about?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Rose.
We took on this because
podcast.
Well, let me finish.
Mm-hmm.
I decided in a meditation that what came to me is that so many people out there are struggling and they're getting through it. And it just is such an inspiration. So what we wanted to do is have people come on our podcast, Together We Rise, and really interview people as far as their trials, their tribulations, and how they manage to get through it, because I really feel it helps. It's very inspirational and
healing.
It's healing, but you're never alone.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
Yeah, it really is.
Sometimes out there, sometimes you could feel alone. And just to know that maybe someone that we have on gave you the inspiration to have hope.
Yeah.
That's why we're here. That's why we're doing it. Right, Roche?
Oh, yeah. So we're really happy to be here today. And we're going to
rock and roll.
Rock it tonight. We have such a fabulous woman. I can't wait.
Oh, she's amazing. And her story is great, too.
Yes.
So you'll hear it. But do you want to, Nim, play the video for everybody? It's our intro video. And we have amazing Jessie Campo who composed the music for us. She wrote the song for us.
It's so beautiful.
She's a composer, right?
She's a singer, composer,
right.
Yes.
So Nim, take it away.
Looking through the pages of our lives as we start out on this journey. Everywhere we look, a different sign telling us where we will go. Feel the sunlight shining in your eyes.
Oh, I love her.
Oh, I love it. Every time that we hear it, I get goosebumps.
We gave her words of what we felt our podcast was about, and she composed that. And of course, we couldn't play the whole thing, but
it's so beautiful.
The part that we do play, it just brings such chills to my soul. Thank you, Jessie.
So before we get into our evening, I always read something of inspiration. And this is usually it comes from Your Holiness by Debbie Ford.
Back it up. There you go. There she is. Okay.
So for this evening, the title of it is In Awe of the Potential of the Human Spirit. I'm standing in the greatest and the grandest version of myself. I'm basking in the magic of the universe, drenched in the good vibrations of God's love. Hallelujah. The light inside me is now on.
And that's what we're bringing on today. Another light being in the world. And we can't wait to introduce Miss Brenda Ringwood. Come on up. There
Hello,
she
hello.
is. Hi.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. How about you guys?
We're doing
We're
great.
doing so good.
And
We
we're
really are.
so happy to have you.
Well, I'm happy to be here. I've been listening and watching you guys, and the title "Together We Rise" is perfect.
Yeah. Isn't it especially I think at this time of our lives,
Yeah.
we need to collectively come together and rise together.
And
Yes.
that's really what you're about and your
Yeah, you are.
organization and what you do. And but briefly just tell people out there a little bit about your story,
About yourself.
about yourself, and how you created BTBY, really.
My
And then we'll
story,
ask you some questions.
sure. My story really isn't anything special for people like me who's been through what I've been through, but I have an interesting story because it's one of change. So I'm known as the professor of change because I tell people change is possible, but there's a caveat to it. So you have to want it. You have to want it. And if you don't want it, then it's not going to happen. But if you really want it, then we're going to show you how to do that and to grab the life that you want. So we call our company hashtag BTBY, but it is becoming the best you. And we help people become the best versions of themselves. And it came about because although I was living what they call the American dream, I was self-employed. I had the house, the kids, the cars, the family, the marriage, everything that you would, they didn't have the white picket fence, but everything.
Did you have a fence?
did, but it wasn't that. But our house set in the middle of 32 acres. I mean, we really had what people would say had it all. But I didn't because I wasn't happy. And that unhappiness landed me in prison for 4 years. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me. People say, what? I don't ever want to go back, but I'm really glad I went because it made me realize what I already had. I had a great family. It wasn't about money and things and assets. And I had a great family. I had relationships with people who loved me. And I took that for granted. And it wasn't until I was sitting in a jail cell all alone. And the only people that were there for me was that family. And I realized how much I was loved. And I took it even further. And, of course, I was angry when I first got there. And I was
Of course.
in the world, right? No, it wasn't my fault I was in there. How dare this happen to me? And
Why me?
yes, you're pleading with God like he's a genie in the bottle. And if you do this, and I'll do that. And then I'm telling you, I was downright angry. I was so angry that I wrote a book, and it's a horror. It's not a horror. It is a horrible book. It's a great book, but it's a horrible book because it's about a female serial killer who kills off everybody that wronged her. That was my mindset, and it's a great book. If you read fiction at all, it's a great book. But so in the second book, I'm not angry anymore. I'm having a hard time finishing it because I'm not angry anymore, right? But I decided I'm not going to let this be a waste of my time. So I'm going to start working on myself. And in that, I started realizing that I need to take responsibility for my own actions, that I had to own my crimes, my mistakes, my life. I was a believer. I believed in Christ. I was living a double life. I was deep in sin, and it's because I was not happy and I was looking at life through the wrong pair of eyes. At life through what other people thought my life should look like instead of what I wanted my life to look like.
Yeah.
And that means making other people happy and everything that comes with that. So I decided that I was going to rule my own kingdom. So I wear a crown a lot, especially when I'm marketing, and I tell people I rule my own kingdom. I am the queen of my kingdom, and I'm not going to let anybody else rule it. And I started doing that while I was in a jail cell, and I got content and happy. I was happy in a jail cell.
That's amazing.
Yes. So I started helping other women in there, and
I was just going to ask
Isn't
you.
it amazing what comes to you when you're in the quietness of your own self?
Yes.
The
Absolutely.
creativity. I hear so much creativity.
Yeah.
I learned to draw while I was in a prison cell.
Wow.
I can draw people, animals, scenery. I mean, it's not the best, and it'll look somewhat like you. I have a unique style, and I don't do that for income. I do that to bless others. So, that was my birthday presents, Christmas presents. So one year, and I'd only been drawing for about a year and a half. I was drawing my family out of the pictures that they sent me. And I only had a pencil, an eraser, a sharpener, and computer paper. And so I would take I couldn't draw it all on one piece of paper because messed up a lot. And you can only erase so much. And I didn't want to ruin because there were 16 people in this drawing.
Wow.
So after I got done with it the way that I wanted it, I take the razor out of the sharpener and I would cut around it because we couldn't have scissors in there, but we could have razors.
Interesting.
And I would cut it out and then I would place them, strategically on the paper how I wanted them. And then I would mail them all to my mom loosely, and then she would put them together. And I created a collage of all my family, and that was her Christmas present one year. So she put it all together, went and had prints made. And I always made sure I was a part of things. So we always read the Bible at Christmas. Our family was together. So I wrote letters to each one of my kids about a childhood story of them. And they read that at Christmas time. So it was like I was still there.
Oh, wow.
So I found ways to be there.
Yeah.
I also celebrated like my 30th year of marriage there. So I created a cartoon strip of my husband and his dogs. And I called it Pops and Bubblicious because my boys call my husband Pops and the dog's name was Bubba. His legal name was Bubba.
Oh, wow.
That is awesome.
And I created these stories, the things that really happened in our life with these dogs. And I did this comic strip and I just started sending them home 1 week at a time. And I have a comic book now about that. And it's kind of comical. I mean, it really is. And who'd have thought, right? That's not something you're learning to do in your late 40s.
No, definitely not.
Do you ever stay in touch with anybody that was in the cells with you? You do.
I do. And you're not supposed to. Now I can because I'm not on paper or anything anymore, but you're not supposed to because they don't want you getting in trouble anymore. But how could you not, when you're spending 24 hours a day with somebody, how can you not love that person, especially somebody that was going through those changes right there with you. And when they come out, you're still seeing that changed person. So that change was real. How do you not continue that relationship?
True.
So I was looking at 30 years though.
Wow.
46 years old. I'm thinking that's a life sentence. I had just been 3 years out of cancer. Am I still, is it going to come back? Am I even going to have a marriage? Are my kids going to talk to me? All these emotions that I was going through. And it took me a year to fight through that before I finally got on my knees and said, okay, God, what is I'm supposed to do? I'm taking responsibility for it. I'm admitting to it. I'm repenting. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. Now what? And then it was another good 6 months of learning and growing through that. I finally got a plea for 78 months, but I got out in 44.
Wow.
Because
and that was God, right?
God, yes, but my prosecutor listened to my attorney phone calls, which is against my rights. So they had to let me out.
Oh, wow.
Well, so say that again.
So anytime you're on the phone with your attorney, that's called client-attorney privilege.
Right.
And my prosecutor actually got the phone calls, the recordings, to try to see what he could learn on my case to try to get me. Right.
That's so bad.
And but he did it 2 months after I got there. But I didn't find out about it until 4 years later. So had I got out in 2 months, I would have went right back to that same life. And God's saying, I'm setting this up because I already know what's going to happen with you.
Yep. Isn't
that when you're ready, I will make sure the doors are open for you. And that's exactly what he did.
Wow, I just got the chills all over, right?
Right.
That is amazing.
Yes. But see, it didn't just happen to me. 4 other women that I was with in there that we were working on our lives of change together. We all got out in about 4 years. One of them had a 12-year sentence. One of them had an 18-year sentence. One of them had an 8-year sentence.
I just get the chills because I always think like collectively we're better than we are by ourselves, right?
That's right.
So wellness versus our mentor used to always say wellness. We is wellness and I is illness.
That's right. That's right. And I'm not making light or a joke of prison. It was very serious. My charges were very serious. I was not a good person. I was in a horrible place. I was also backed into a corner, and then everything that adds to that. And, I did some things that I shouldn't have done. And, looking back at it, man, I can't even believe I was that person. Right.
Right.
But I would not be doing what I'm doing right now had it not been for that. So when I got out, I'm embarrassed. I don't want to. My mom says, "Oh, you want to go to McDonald's? Yeah, let's go through drive-through." I didn't want to go inside because right.
Yeah.
So you think of the whole world's against you. In reality, it's just a small group of people.
Right.
But that was my mindset, and I was so fat. I could barely walk. My knees needed to be. The first year I got out, I had 5 major surgeries. My health was so bad. So I was healing, all these things that were going on. And I was tired of the way people were looking at me, talking about me in my mind. Not everybody knew.
Of course.
When I had to go look for a job or whatever, then I had to tell them. And then those looks, oh, really? You went to prison? And then they go do your research and they find out what you did. And then they don't want to, there's no going back. And I said, enough. I'm not that person anymore. In fact, even before I went in, I wasn't that person anymore. I'd already started changing my life, but things were from the past that reared its ugly head. And I said, I'm going to create my own platform. You have owned multi-million-dollar businesses that you have created yourself. You can create your own platform. So I did, where nobody can tell me what to do. So I took ownership and I was ruling my own kingdom. And we had our very first event. It was a virtual event in November of 2021. We had our first in-person event in 2022 in February. We've had several events since, virtual masterminds, in person, either faith-based or through Becoming the Best You. And things were going great, right? So I meet a couple people and I'm introduced to a whole new world. And then my world comes crashing down again because somebody didn't like my past and they brought it up and they created this website about me and they were spreading all this stuff. So I just attached it to my website and said, thank you for putting it all in one place because I tell people about it. Thank you so
Now
much.
you made it easier. Thanks.
Yes.
Yeah.
What you tried to destroy me with, I created something better with it. So thank you for that because change isn't real if you haven't changed. So please go look up at who I was and what I'm doing now. So we created a show called From Felon to Fabulous. And I was going to go with that first, but I was still hiding. So I went with Becoming the Best You. So now, because of that, I say thank you to all the Maries of the world because now From Felon to Fabulous is a wonderful, fabulous show where we are talking about people who have been in prison, who have completely changed their life. And it's not just inmates, it's family of inmates, it's wardens, it's correctional officers, police officers. It's the whole gamut of what prison is about.
Yeah.
So do you think that prison, from the time you were when you were in there to now, has it changed? Do you know anything?
I've only been out for about 5 years. So it's probably I would say prison is prison and it's always going to be prison. The difference is it's probably a whole lot more humane now than it was in the past. You have your rights and you get fed. The food's not the best, but the conditions are not. And when I say you got to go to the hole, it's really not a hole in the ground. There probably was a day that it was a hole in the ground, which is a hole, which is mainly just solitaire right now. Now, are there some things that happen in there that are dark and evil? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow.
But you know what? It happened in your neighborhood too.
I was just going to say, but were you ever scared?
I wasn't. First things foremost, I never put myself in a situation that was going to cause me to be scared or put me in violence. And the second part is I didn't participate in anything that could come back on me. So a lot of things, now some things happen to people that you don't have anything. You could be getting in the middle of a fight that you were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. But in the women's prison, it's probably not as bad as in the men's. I'm not saying that it is or isn't, just depends on where you are. But at the same time, I didn't put myself in those situations. I didn't put in, I did put in when people came to me for advice, but I was always respected in there. They always called me Miss Brenda, regardless if they were 18 or 88. And we had some old people in there too.
Really?
I mean, you would think that I was in a federal holding facility and we had some people in their 80s that were being charged with charges.
Holy moly. What were they charged for?
Oh, all over. And some of it could have been from things from their past and some might have been from yesterday. It just is what it is. But I met some really cool people, and I met some really bad people. And I'm not saying that there's people that never need to come out of prison.
They need
I'm not
to.
anti-prison. I'm not anti-police. I'm not anti any of that. There's a place for everything. What I am is I think that we incarcerate people way too quickly for things that probation could handle.
Correct.
Or for the drugs, for the addicts, we give them a 30-day rehab when they probably need a 6-month rehab.
Right.
At least.
and they're getting incarcerated for 5 and 10 years when they're really just an addict. And there's so many things that could be done differently because our government makes it about money. It is a
Yes, they do.
Mhm.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
It's all about the almighty buck.
That's right.
It
And
always
that's
has
the
been.
downside of it. And I will tell you,
Yes.
so I got out and I got ridiculed because I filed a lawsuit. And I didn't file a lawsuit for millions of dollars. And so while I was in there, I was just a detainee. And what does that mean? I hadn't pled guilty. So that meant I was not adjudicated yet. I hadn't been sentenced yet. So during the 2016 presidential election, I had the right to vote, and I didn't get to do that.
Mm.
So I filed a class action lawsuit that we should be able to vote.
Yeah.
And the ACLU picked it up, and it now in federal detention centers, you can now vote if you're a detainee.
That's awesome.
And they thought I was after money. I didn't get a dime for that, but it was about the rights.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's what we knew would happen. You have to put a dollar amount on it, but we settled for giving the rights back to the inmates.
Yeah. Which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of innocent people in there. I mean, not as many as the guilty, but there are some people who got caught up in something or knew about it, but they really weren't a party to it. And our federal government loves to indict people on conspiracy because they hope you're going to tell on the people they really want, and they can't really prove it. And these people, these women, they want to go home to their kids, so they're scared to death, so they plea out, or they tell, or something happens. And there was a lot of people in there on conspiracy.
Well, it's interesting because you see these shows. I know, and even though she's Kim Kardashian, who wants to be the lawyer who, is taking after her father, getting people out of jail that really are not supposed to be in jail.
Right.
Proving the case of why.
Yes. Yeah.
And you hear it so much. Someone was in for 40 years,
Yeah.
and not
And
guilty,
didn't even-
and didn't
right.
even do the crime.
Right.
Well, that's how part of the reason why I got out. So there's a prosecutor here in Kansas who was working for the state, and she put away some people who weren't guilty for 20 plus years. They got out thanks to DNA. They were not guilty. So now she's moved over to the federal side. And in order to win her cases, she was listening to these attorney phone calls. So my attorney, who happened to be the head of the state of Kansas, so all the attorneys worked for her. She basically was bullying, you need to get off this case because I have this on you. Well, instead of that attorney being scared, she turned it into my attorney, which was her boss, and my attorney went after it. Wow. And this big thing blew up, this big lawsuit, all these things happened. This attorney was caught trying to break into the judge's chambers, trying to steal the evidence to protect herself. And so that's how I ended up that's how I found out that my prosecutor was in on this. I didn't have that prosecutor, but he too had asked for my phone calls.
Wow.
And lied about it in court. He said, well, if I have it, I have no knowledge of it. Well, we had, and I don't have a gag order. We have this document that's an email to the facility that was in asking for my phone calls. And they said, well, we're going to give it to you this time, but the next time you need a subpoena. So, he's lying about it in court. And that's why I got out. Wow. They have to let you out. That's the remedy for it. And like I said, it happened 2 months after I got there, but I wasn't ready yet. And God knew that.
That's amazing.
So what do you think? Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it. We took it forward and we started becoming the best you, and it's turned into a beautiful movement.
Wow. So what do you think, what was the biggest lesson you learned about yourself going through all of that? What was the biggest?
My biggest lesson that I learned was that I needed to put God first in everything that I do, because I said I believed in him, but yet I wasn't willing to make my actions show that. So that's my first lesson. The second, that the love of your family is enough and you are enough. You don't need what the world thinks that you need. So when you put God first, your family second, and you put everything else behind that, the rest of the relationships, the rest of the life is going to happen. And I didn't do that. I had things backwards, and, I'm just very fortunate that my husband stayed with me. We'll be married 36 years this summer.
What a man.
When I had one of the gals on the show that I actually served with at the end of a show that we did with somebody else, and she said Brenda's husband was there every week. He came to see her every week. I tell people that. I don't think they believe me. But when you hear other people say it that witness that, and I didn't take that for granted, because I saw these people who never got a visit.
Wow.
And I knew that my family, it was only a 30-minute visit. So it took them, they had to get there 30 minutes early. They had to go for security. They had to wait for them to come get us. So it was a 3-hour process for them to see me for 30 minutes between the drive-in and getting ready for it.
Hmm. Wow.
He's very special,
Yeah,
I will
he
say.
is.
But here's the thing. A woman's supposed to stand by the man when he goes to prison, but why isn't the man supposed to stand by the woman?
True.
That's true.
That's
That is
very true.
The standards. So with what all you're saying, because you're speaking about God,
Yeah.
if God could speak to you, what's the message he wants you to know?
Through him, all things are possible.
Mm.
Wow.
It's interesting because, you know, we're all tested in our lives, right? Everyone has something. You had this huge thing that happened that you learned so much in what you're sharing today.
Mhm.
And it's like, why does it have to be
Right.
right? Can't you just trust and believe and have that connection? No, you have to go through
Yeah,
the
all
torture,
the struggles.
the struggles. And I guess that's just a lesson of Earth School.
You know, some people learn it without those lessons. I was hard-headed. I was
Yeah.
hard-headed, but I always have been. And, you know, I tell people the love that I experienced in that jail cell when it was just me and God was like none other. And when you experience that,
Yeah.
how can you go back to experience less?
True.
Why would you want less than that?
Correct.
Yeah, that's like asking a loved one to come back from heaven. That's being selfish, right? I mean, we miss them, but
Yeah.
do you really want them to come back to where they're at to where they're going to come back to? You know, and a lot of people say, "Man, you've really made a comeback." No, I didn't come back, because to come back, I had to go through it again. I had to come back through that point. I've moved forward from it. I'm not going back, and I'm not coming back through it.
That's a good point.
That is.
That's a good point. Yeah, say that again. That's a great point if you can remember that one.
If you want to come back, if people say, "Oh, you've made a comeback," I'm not coming back through anything. I am moving forward, because I'd have to come back through everything to make the comeback.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can bounce back from your health. I'll give you that. But I don't want to come back through anything I've been through.
I get it.
From it.
Yeah, that's great.
How do you connect with God? How do you connect?
Like, what's your
What's
action? How do you do it for you? Like, what does that look like?
I will admit I am very lazy at connecting with God. I need to be better at connecting with God. But when I need to connect with God, I fast, I get in the Word, I pray, I listen to Christian music, I listen to talk radio. There was a time where I wouldn't read anything secular or watch anything secular on TV prior to read, like, you know, a book, and there was sometimes all we had, or the newspaper. And I would make sure I read the Bible before I read anything secular. And in order, you know, I was praying because my case got superseded. So I was fasting and I was doing all these things. Please don't let this case get superseded. I went in with 10 charges. It got superseded to 26. I'm like, God, I'm fasting. I'm doing all these things. And you're still letting it happen. But see, it had to happen, because see, the truth has to come out for true healing. If you can't face the truth, then you're never going to be healed. So everything got brought to light, right? So by doing that, publicly, you know, everybody knew everything. So they thought, even though some of it was true, some of it wasn't true, some of it they didn't even know about, right? But at the same time, how can you heal if you're not willing to face the truth? So I understood that now, where I was mad when it happened. But all of that fasting and all of that praying and everything that I did, his Bible verse that says, have the faith of mustard seed, happened. Because 4 years later, those doors opened. So everything that I was doing, God was already preparing that way, because my actions were obedient.
Yeah.
So now that I'm out, I have to admit I get lazy with it, because you get busy and life happens, and I have to remember, wait, stop, time out. Go back to the Word of God, go back to prayer, go back to listening to what you're. So here's the thing that a friend of mine said. If the music you're listening to and you have headphones on isn't appropriate, okay, or it's a dirty comedian or whatever you're listening to, would you take those headphones off and put them on God and let him hear what you're
That's good.
But he's already hearing all of that, right?
That's true.
100%.
So you need to change the way that you act, the way that you talk, the way that you speak, the way that you treat people. And see, don't look down on people, because you never know what they're going through. And I will take that person that doesn't have the $5 million house over the person that does, if they are a true believer, because the house doesn't matter, right?
Well, it's so interesting, because, you know, I am also, you know, massage therapist, and I have people that have so much and they're so not generous.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And then I have people that don't, and they're like super tippers, and they're just more generous with who they are.
That's
It's
right.
interesting. Yeah.
It is. And a lot of people say, well, that's why they're millionaires. Well, some people just are. But I
Right.
will tell you, I had a guest on, we did a virtual, and there was a guy on there that's worth $31 million. And he said on this show is about becoming the best you. Everybody wants to be a millionaire. Well, let me tell you, sometimes being a millionaire is not what's best for you.
Exactly.
That's true.
Maybe
To
that's not
hear
your
somebody
time.
like that say that, it was powerful because it's a lot of responsibility that comes with that.
Oh
It
yeah.
sure
And
is.
fake relationships that come with that.
Yeah.
And the things that he was saying made me realize that, okay, maybe he has a lonely life. Maybe he would trade all that money, for the family that I have. And we had people try to tear our family apart, and it didn't work. It didn't work. Including our own government tried to get to where my daughter wouldn't talk to me. And I finally said, if you can't talk to me, then they would have an order in place saying that we couldn't talk. They're just trying to scare you into not talking to me because you're on the visit list, honey. You can come in anytime you want. And that's when because she was young, that's when she went, maybe my mom's right on this. Because, yeah.
Yeah, they try to scare you.
Yeah.
I mean, they use so many different tactics to scare you.
And
into
people give
saying things.
Yeah.
give into it because they can, because they're scared.
Because they don't have also another sense of self or some foundation to God where
Yes.
they have that common sense, what's real and what's not.
Right.
That's earned. Yes. Well, let me tell you, I had one thing that my kids were not little, so I didn't have other people raising my children. And my family said, fight, Mom, fight. If you have to stay in longer to make it right, fight.
Yeah.
They always made sure I had phone time. They sent me books. They sent me mail. They sent me letters. They sent me money. I never had anything without in there. I mean, it was just amazing. It was beautiful.
So
And-
what's the one? Oh, go ahead. Finish. Go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, and I saw girls that got nothing.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So what's the one thing you want people to know about you?
What I want people to know about me is the person that you see now is not the person who did all those things. And it took me a long time to realize that. I went to an event with Dr. Reuben West, and he kind of gave me back my self-esteem. And he's kind of what started BTBY, because I've been a speaker for years. I've been a speaker for decades. So speaking wasn't new to me, but I had lost not my passion for it, but I lost my self-esteem. I lost my worth. I thought my value. I thought I had lost all of this. And I went to his event, and I didn't have any money because I'd only been out right at a year. And he took the time at this event, which are usually very busy, and he spent 15 minutes with me. And in that 15 minutes, he changed my life. And he said, the person I see before me now is not the person who did all those things. And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you can get back to your life.
Yeah.
And it was powerful. And he comes to our events and speaks today. I'm going to Africa with him this summer.
Wow.
And he didn't judge me for that.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
amazing.
That's
Yeah, go ahead. What were you
I
gonna say?
just think that I think a lot in this whole thing is forgiveness.
Forgiveness is a big deal. You
Yeah.
have to forgive yourself.
Absolutely.
You have to forgive others. They don't have to ask you for it. Forgiveness is for you.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, there's something that I did do, and it was the hardest thing I ever had to do. I had to face the people that I had wronged. And my family said, you're crazy. You don't have to do that. And I said, I do, because if I'm going to get on the stage and speak, I went. So if they would talk to me, I tried. Some of them did. Some of them didn't. Some of them, whatever. Some people we picked right back up where we left off. Some people won't have nothing to do with me, and some people were just okay. And that's okay. My door is still going to be open to them. But not only did I talk to the people that I wronged, I talked to the people who thought I had wronged them, or to the people that I wronged that they didn't know I had wronged.
Interesting.
Wow, that's
And I went back,
interesting.
and it was a good year.
Making amends. It's like you were making amends. Is
Yes,
really what
I
you're
was.
doing.
And I even took a class. I went to a church, and this pastor really did not want me to talk to anybody in his church without taking this class. And the pastor of the church I went to now said, you don't have to do that. You don't have to use a pastor to talk to any of those people. But I took the class.
Wow.
Class because I wanted to make sure, and I needed the class. It was okay. It was on mending relationships the right way. And I needed the class for myself, but I also needed to prove to them that they were important enough to me to spend the time to take this class to go try to make amends with them.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, forgiveness is
It's
huge.
huge. And I'm sure you felt so much freer, right?
I did, but it was so hard. It
I
was,
bet.
Did it? Of course.
and to ask for forgiveness, you have to admit you're wrong, right?
And
That's
very few people want to admit they want to be right.
And you know what's so interesting? I mean, with all the work that we've done together, my mom and I, and the work that we did with our mentor and teacher and shadow work, and the one thing I can say is that being wrong is free.
Mm-hmm.
Being wrong is freedom. You know, I used to be so righteous too, you know,
Mhm.
righteous position. I'm right. And
I
sometimes
was
it
righteous
serves
while I
you.
was wrong.
And
Right.
sometimes righteous serves you if you have a really strong case, right? And you're, you know, in this situation. But there's so much freedom also in being wrong and
Mhm.
admitting it.
Yeah.
It's just a vulnerability and the
Yeah.
connection you get.
You know, once you admit that, it opens up the room for you to see other areas of your life that you need to fix.
Yes.
And you can fix them before you are wrong.
Absolutely.
Correct. Yeah. So it's kind of great because if you were going to give someone the best advice in life, what would it be?
My best advice for people is to let them know that you are worthy. You have a value, and it doesn't matter what other people's opinion is of you. You need to be yourself and grab the life that you want. If that is working the lowliest job and it makes you happy, then do it. Don't worry about anybody else's opinion. Do what makes you happy. As long as it's ethical. I'm not saying,
Right,
Right,
of course,
right.
of course. Of
but
course.
you know, if you want to be an artist and you have to live in a shack because you're the starving artist, then be the starving artist. That's okay.
Because you'll be happy.
Yes, I would trade. I had it all. I had the house, the cars, the land, the things, the boats, the RVs, all that stuff, right? I had the business. I had the real estate. I was miserable.
Yeah.
And life is so freeing without that responsibility.
Yeah. And again, it's a great question. This is a great one. What advice would you give to your youngest self?
Don't
That's a good
do
one.
it.
Don't do it. Well,
Yeah.
you know, it's interesting because you're saying don't do it. There was a part of you that you knew, because we talked about this sidebar, I believe, when this all happened with you going to prison, there was a part of you that knew what you were doing wasn't right, correct?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I mean, a 2-year-old knows when he's lying about something, you know, I mean, come on, we know.
Yep,
Absolutely.
we do.
We know.
We sure do.
And we don't listen, and that's the part, right? That's the part.
That's right.
It's just amazing how people just want to not take responsibility.
In every way, shape, or form. And it could be, you know, you might have said something to a friend and it
Yeah.
upset them, but you're so righteous,
Yep.
you won't even say, "Look, did I hurt your feelings?
Right.
If I did, I'm sorry." I mean, it could be that simple.
Right. And sometimes people don't even know that they hurt that you have hurt
Correct.
their feelings, and the relationship dissipates and you don't know why, and they don't ever tell you. And it could have been something as simple as you didn't like the color of my hair.
Right.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
you just don't know. And I believe that communication is key. And I tell people we teach a speaking class, and I tell people even if you don't want to be a speaker, you need to be a better communicator. And if you're in a position of sales or leadership at your job, you need to know how to communicate. Sometimes you have to take a public speaking course on that. Communication is the key to success.
100%.
And
And let me tell you, when I say success, I don't mean money. I can
know what you're
no, I
saying.
know.
dishes. Yes.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
also think with saying that, it's in the listening as well. You know, being in the listening of what people are saying
And not saying.
and not saying,
Yeah.
and you feel it.
Man, there's so much truth in that. So when I first got
Mm-hmm.
out, you know, I'm the mom and I have these young kids. I mean, my 20s to 30s, right? I had to take a back step and a back seat to their life and just watch and observe because I couldn't give them any advice after the things I had done. So I had to prove that I wasn't that person anymore to them. And you don't just wake up and say, I'm going to change, and it happened.
Right.
So I had to have years of change before my kids come back to me and say, Mom, can I talk to you about this? Mom, what do you think about that? Mom, what should I do about this? I had to rebuild that. I had lost all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell people. Change is only real if you want it. And it is a process, and it's not a daily thing. It's not a weekly thing. When you see change, you are going to see it years later in people. But it is a daily thing in your mind.
What you have to do.
You have to do. That's right.
Correct.
Yeah.
100%.
And it always goes back to doing your own work, right? I mean, you can't just have a quick fix. Everything's going to be good. You have to work at it. You have to be willing to look. You have to be willing to change, right?
That's right.
And admit when you're right or you're wrong.
Yeah.
Tell the truth to yourself first, so you can tell the truth to others.
That's right.
Yeah.
You had said something. I'm trying just now. I just remembered you started talking about somebody that wasn't nice to you or something, and yet you put her on stage, or you had her come to your event, or there was something in that. Am I correct in that a little bit?
I had somebody basically take somebody else's side, right, on something that
was it. Yes.
So the only way, you know what, you can do what you want, but why don't you come check it out first and see what you think? And I will even let you speak. And by the time you leave, you're going to see that this movement is real, that our people are real. And we have a community of people who actually love people and forgive people and want to help people. So why don't you come experience it before you run your mouth?
That's a good idea.
She did. And she's involved.
I love it.
Because you rose higher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a really good one because we're talking about so many things. But what book inspired you so much that it changed your life for the better?
You know, I'm going to tell you, you guys are going to laugh because it is a fiction book.
I love it. It doesn't matter. It changed your life.
Yeah. I have read so many books. I was a reader before prison, and I used to read nothing but self-help books or biblical, books about the Bible. And so I really didn't read many fiction books, very few and far between. If I was on a trip or something, maybe because we were on vacation.
Right.
So in there, I had to read whatever I had access to. So I started reading fiction books, and I actually read this book. I can't remember the name of it now. It's by Francine Rivers. It's a Christian book, and it was about love, what is the name of the book now? Anyways, it was based on the prostitute who's on Hosea, who kept having his wife come back over love, So there was truth in it because it was biblically based on this story, but the fictional characters, and it was about this woman, this guy loved his wife through, and she was prostitute, and she finally came back and they had this life. And the obedience to the marriage that this man, not the woman, did for this wife. And he waited for her. He let her go live that life, and he would go find her, bring her back. And then he finally says, okay, go. And then she comes back to him. And redeeming love.
Wow. Redeeming love.
It was just a great book. And it was so real it wasn't just on marriage. It was relationship with God, relationship with people, relationship with your past, with your habits. So, when you tie all that together, we do that. Yes, she was stepping out in sin in her marriage, but we step out in sin and so many other things in our lives. You don't have to be sleeping around to be in sin. What you say, what you do, your actions, they might not be illegal, but it's still not right. And it tied this whole thing together about this man who was listening to God. He was following what his heart said to do. He was doing his job, and, he wasn't very wealthy, but, he stayed with things, and he had a nice life. But from the outside looking in, he had a wife that was a whore, and, what the people were saying, and why would you wait for her? And he went with his gut. And in the end, they had this beautiful life together.
Wow.
Isn't that great?
That is awesome.
It's a story of change. So it was like, this is who you need to be. And then there's another character when people say, I get asked that question a lot. Well, what movie inspired you? I might say Gone with the Wind, but not because of what Gone with the Wind was about. There's one character there, and I can't remember her name, but it was Charlotte. It was O'Hare, the woman's Scarlett O'Hara's cousin, who got the man that she wanted. But she loved everybody, and she was always about forgiveness and tried to work on everybody. And she had a very small part in the movie and in the book, but she loved everybody. And she was a very ethical person. So that little tiny person, if we could be just that one person and have just a bit of that integrity, how powerful we could be.
Yeah, I remember when we first did our work, and the work that we shadow work. our mentor at the time, we had to do so much to clean up our past. I mean, make amends.
Really?
I mean, things that we had done wrong, we had to balance out the scales, and
Yeah.
it was intense. But it gave you the freedom. It gave you choice to do things different,
Yeah.
and take responsibility, which is what we're talking
Yep.
about. So, if you were able to change the world as it is today,
And boy, oh boy, we got some world.
what changes would you make and why? It's a big question.
I would change our currency to love.
Ooh.
That's the first change that I would make. And then I would grow that instead of everything else.
I want to come into your world.
That's exactly.
I mean, think about it. Back in the day, people didn't have jobs where they got paid. Everybody worked together. That you had a barn that needed raised. Everybody got together. Everybody helped with the crops, because if you didn't grow your crops, you didn't eat. It wasn't about the big house and whatever. People evolved into what our society is today, and people had slaves, and it depends on what part of the world you want to talk about. But go back to just people living on the land.
Yeah, and what was it? I know someone he was very wise when he was young. He said we should do the bartering system.
Oh yeah, the
where
that's what people did
years ago.
Yeah.
That way, if you want the bigger house, it's up to you to go cut those trees down and make it. If you didn't have the 1 bedroom, then that's okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
You got the 3-story, then that's because you went out and did it and you found the people to help you build it. It wasn't about the money.
Nope.
And I tell people, my little Corolla gets me there for a whole lot less money than that Cadillac ever did.
Oh, that's so funny. I had a Corolla.
Yeah, she did.
A red Corolla.
It's a great car. Those last forever.
They do, and that's
it.
So we have a little hatchback. I get 35 miles to the gallon, and the way I run the roads, why am I going to pay 12 miles to the gallon just so I can do good? Yeah,
true. Very true.
Wow. Well, this has been a
God
of so much wisdom and knowledge, and your experience has really helped me in a lot of ways tonight. It opened my eyes into so many ways.
You really did.
We thank you
for that. Your
story
is so powerful, Brenda. It really, really
and what
is.
you learned, and how you're now
where you are now,
taking it and using it and creating
this
amazing.
When people say where you are now, don't look at his money, because there's times I might have $10 in my checkbook to do.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter though.
I am so wealthy in the relationships that I have. That is so rewarding. I can't even begin to tell you.
I think sometimes you have to go back to go forward, like with what you just said. It's like you're used to, oh my God, if you have these millions of dollars, then that means da 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 da. And so you're exactly where you need to be for the world to get what you're doing now.
That's right. That's right. Well, they have to see that I was willing, because I could, when I got out, I had jobs from my competitors in the janitorial world that wanted me to come sell for them. And I mean, it was $100,000 a year job coming out of jail. That was pretty good, right?
Yeah.
And I said, if I'm going to go back in that industry, I would do it for myself. If I get the job for that, then I'm making it about the money. And I'm making it about, I would go right back into what I just came out of, although it might not be committing any crimes, but I'm right back into that same life.
Yeah.
That's not who I want. So I spent that first year getting myself healthy, rebuilding my relationships with my family. And that's what I did. Once that took place, then I started to build what I was going to do for a living. And I started planning it. And I still doubted myself. There's no way I can do this. I don't have any money. And well, you know what? Relationships don't cost money. They shouldn't.
No, they shouldn't.
I partnered with a bunch of people that had the same vision, and we all have worked our tail off. Terrence Leftridge, I met him at the same event with Dr. Reuben West, and he saw the vision, and he's got blood, sweat, and tears in this. We have a board. I made sure we put a board together so I stay accountable, because I don't want to backslide. And if I do, then there's somebody there to say, what are you doing?
Right.
Which is great accountability.
Yeah. And a lot of the people, another person on that board was also from somebody I met from that same event with Dr. Reuben West. A lot of our speakers are from there. And they could say, you got all of my speakers on your step. Instead, I'm so glad my people have a place.
Yes.
That's the mindset. And when you truly want to bring people with you, I want you to pass me.
Yes.
Exactly where I want to go.
Yep.
But I'm going to help you get there.
Yeah.
And I had to realize that that was okay. It was okay to be happy with where you are.
You know,
Yeah,
it's,
and you win, I win.
Yes.
It's that
Yeah.
whole.
you're like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, you really
Because a lot of
are.
people.
Oh, it's hard. I'm going to
that.
tell you, there's times where and I get some
I
pretty
know.
funky people that come my way, but then I also see the beauty in those funky people, right?
Yes.
And then I learn to be funky myself, and it's okay.
Exactly.
Yep.
It's true. That's why you created them, because
Yeah.
you're funky too.
That's
Right.
right.
And I love it. I love it. So when you become the thing you make fun of,
Exactly.
there's the change, right?
There's your freedom right there. I am that I am.
That's
Yeah.
right.
That's so true. That's
Well,
right.
God, Brenda, it's been
We
so
are.
amazing having you, and everything you shared was so beautiful and
And
so from the heart.
powerful. Oh God, yes. And
And-
how do people get to you?
Yes, how did they get to you?
I am everything at Brenda Ringwood. I'm Brenda Ringwood at gmail.com, BrendaRingwood.com. All my social media is Brenda Ringwood. And people say, I got a hard time for that because they say, well, that's not even her name. Because my legal name is Brenda Wood. So I make sure people know that. But when I was coming back to the speaking world and I was looking for a website, there was another Brenda Wood out there, was a bigwig down in Texas and with some TV station. So I put Brenda Ringwood in it because that was my maiden name. People go by that stuff all the time. There's nothing illegal or unethical about it. So it's my stage name, but I make sure people know my legal name is Brenda Wood. I still go by Brenda Wood. I answer to Brenda Wood, but I do go by Brenda Ringwood for all my social media because there's nobody else out there. I'm the only one.
Awesome.
That's super.
All
And
right,
the best
well,
one.
That's
the
right.
Only
The only
but
one we know and the best
one.
one. Exactly. So everyone will find you just by tapping into your name.
Yes. Or you can just do hashtag BTBY or go to comechangeyourlife.com. But if you just hashtag BTBY, you're going to find us everywhere.
Okay.
We
awesome.
are there. We have a conference coming up in Kansas City, August 25th through the 27th. If you haven't, I say it's a conference, it is an experience. It is a beautiful, beautiful experience. And change happens there.
Oof,
Let's get started
I
in your life is what we tell people.
love
so
it. Oh my
fabulous,
God, I love
Brenda.
it. Well, we love
Wow,
you.
we do
and
love
we're so
you.
grateful we met you
Yeah.
through.
And we met through Sabrina Prodick, who we met through BTBY.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, the first time I met her, I was with this person who created that website.
Oh, I love it. That's awesome.
Great. That is so great, Brenda.
I love what you guys are doing. The Together We Rise. It's just beautiful, and it fits what you guys do. Just keep doing what you're doing because people need to hear hope and encouraging stories. And
yes.
When you talk about your shadow work, you had to face your own demons.
Oh, honey.
Yes, yes, and yes.
And main reason why people don't do that is because they're scared to death of it.
Absolutely. And you know what
I
say? You're only scared of yourself.
Right.
It's a story.
Yep. A
Right.
story
It's not so deep. The shadow
No.
is just a beautiful part of who you are, dark and light. You need it both.
That's
There's
right.
a gift in it all.
That's right. That's
100%. It's like, please, the world, just embrace it.
People, for some reason, don't want to look at themselves, but boy, if they only open their eyes into their soul.
You're free when you have your shadow.
That's right. And when things are all out there, nobody can use it. When
you're like, yeah, I am that. You're right.
Yep, but they can't. Why do you do that? So you can't use it against me later. You've been
right.
You're right. I'm a felon. Great.
Yep.
Okay, great. That's right. I stole. I this.
Yep.
I that.
Right.
Whatever. Yeah.
Oh
okay.
yeah. We are an open book. We really are.
Have to be, because if you're not, then you're not healed.
Right.
You're still hiding. You're not becoming the person that you want to become, and it's going to stagnate you. And it's going to what happens?
And it'll hit you like the beach ball, right in your face.
It does.
In all the most inopportune times.
Yep.
Boom,
Totally.
there it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we thank you for being on Together We
Yeah.
Rise. We love you. We can't wait to
I love you guys too. So just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And get to Kansas City. You need
I
to.
know. We're thinking.
I know.
We're thinking August.
And if you have anybody that you feel want to come on here, we'd be more than welcome.
I have several people that I think would love to come on there.
We would love it. We would love
We
it.
thank you. We love you. And of course, we will be very close in touch.
Yes, we will.
Well, you guys have a
Absolutely.
wonderful evening.
You too.
Thank you,
Thanks,
sweetheart.
Brenda. Mwah.